Hello, good evening. This is from Dial Square to Where, Mesut Island Disks, a very, very special episode. I've got some great guests on tonight. In fact, if I was Harry Redknapp, I'd say three top guests on tonight. And one of them, Tayo, is running a little bit late. He's going to be on with us in a few moments, but I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Francis Leach first. How are you, Francis? All the way from Australia,
Hello.
Melbourne.
Yes, good morning here from Melbourne, Australia. How are you, Andrew?
I'm very well indeed. And I don't know whether you've met Bernard Butler before, Francis, but Bernard, how are you?
No, I haven't.
I'm good, thank you. How are you? How are you all?
Very, very well, thank you. And I'm delighted to have you on. So, yeah, Francis, Bernard, Francis. Always like to do the introductions. It's very polite, isn't it?
Please meet you, Francis.
Yeah, I know your word, Bernard. Lovely to meet you.
Well, the great thing is we've got football back tomorrow, which is, there's obviously more important things going on in the world than football, but it's also nice to have something just to take your mind off all the awful things that are going on in the world as well. So it's nice to have that distraction just to take your mind off it, even if it's just a couple of hours here and there throughout the week. So what a better way to have the restart of the football than a great show like this tonight with some great guests. We're going to have a lot to go through. We're going to be going through the Mesut Island Disks questions, which I sent you all across earlier. I say we'll go through and talk to you a bit more individually as we're giving you your answers. But I'm going to get started because we've got, an awful lot to get through between the four of us. I'll go to you first, Francis. Now, the first question is, if you were on a desert island and you could take with you one Arsenal goal to watch whenever you liked, over and over again, what would be your choice and why?
Difficult. Toss up between two. Michael Thomas's goal at Anfield would be right up there because of what it meant at the time and just the exquisite timing of it all to win the league in '89. Not the prettiest goal, but when you watch it, and we've all watched it many times, it just has a touch of good fortune, a touch of never say die, which is always something that you want to see from an Arsenal team, and a clinical cold finish at the end that changed the course of the club's history. So that one's right up there. But I think I have to go with Dennis Bergkamp against Newcastle. That extraordinary goal is still probably the one I've watched more than any other down the YouTube wormhole that has been this layoff that we haven't been able to watch any real
definitely.
football. Just the execution of that particular goal, that is still it's just baffling how he's able to pull that off, the technique and the clinical finish at the end. Even how did he know where he was by the time he pirouetted and opened himself up to score? Is extraordinary. He's my all-time favourite Arsenal player, and that moment still is, it's the highest quality moment I've ever seen anyone produce in an Arsenal shirt. So I'll go with Dennis against Newcastle as the one that, it's ballet and football boots. So that's the one for me.
Do you know what? You just literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to say it's almost balletic, really, the way that he did it, and I've never seen anyone do anything like that before, and I don't know whether we will ever see anything like that again. Within my lifetime, at least, it was incredible, wasn't it? And you say that. How did he know where it was and where he was and it's just instinct for him, I guess. Really, it's just his part of his genius, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all those things that we saw that he produced throughout his career that come together in one movement. It's like the Nadia Comaneci of the generation, sticking the landing on the perfect 10. It was absolutely beautifully done, and I'm sure he meant it. It wasn't
he absolutely did mean it. Yeah, absolutely did mean it.
He knew exactly what he was doing. Extraordinary.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great choice. It's a popular choice, and it's a great one. And you can't really blame anyone for choosing that whatsoever. Now, Bernard, what's your choice of goal?
Well, it's funny. Francis mentions balancing the important, like the Michael Thomas goal, versus the beautiful. That's because that's often the balance, really. The ones that really pick up, and sometimes against sort of really meaningless opponents as well. So you kind of remember the Özil goal, but not many people remember Ludogorets.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely! What a goal that was!
It's such an amazing thing. But then when you mention Ludogorets, you think, really, what was that?
I know exactly. Well, it's a bit sad that we're in that competition, isn't it?
Exactly,
But
yeah.
you can only score against who he's playing against, I guess.
You definitely wanted that to happen at Old Trafford or White Hart Lane or something, but it didn't
Mm.
happen at Ludogorets. But there's moments like that, and of course the Bergkamp goal, because his whole existence sort of seemed to revolve around I don't know, just a sort of above football in a way that Özil does. In a way, you know, I'm an Özil fan, but Bergkamp always sort of existed above that kind of level. Like I can't imagine him hanging out with Tony Adams or particularly imagine just wafting in, doing this magical thing, and then wafting out. Of course, not flying, of course. But what I would go for, the things that stick in my mind actually more recent, and I wanted to try and go for more recent things because they're things that I've actually witnessed. And really, this is probably a slightly unfashionable one, but the return of Henry at the Emirates.
Oh yeah.
Just because it was because again, it was just Leeds, and it was what even was that? The Carling Cup or the FA Cup? I'm not even sure.
The FA Cup.
The FA Cup. It was certainly a struggle. It wasn't a good game, and it wasn't something like wow, what match winning.
Yeah.
It was really a desperation moment. But there was something really beautiful about the way he came on, and I always felt like I remember being there. I remember feeling that night that he almost didn't look like one of the team in the sense it was like somebody come out of the crowd like a superhero, wearing an Arsenal kit, or like a statue had come to life,
Yeah.
kind of superhero.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
He had at that time the beard, and his shape had changed. He's more stocky and older, and a good 15 years older than some of the players, and he has that potential, and those great players have that potential of transcending and doing something almost spiritual, And so you have those moments where you have that Anfield winner that wins the title, but you have those moments which just feel sort of spiritual, like, wow, that was just always going to happen. And the Leeds game was kind of meaningless in the grand scheme of it, but it was just something incredible about that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I burst out crying when he scored that goal. It was just at home. It was early in the morning here in Melbourne, and it was such an emotional moment for everybody. Just to see him back and to see him score in that way, it was like it was so beautiful. I think that's a great choice.
He didn't have many beautiful moments at the Emirates either. He wasn't really, that was kind of almost past the point. So for him to return and see him run over to Wenger as well, and that kind of, it was a very club moment. Meant more than just beating Leeds, because everyone forgot that we were terrible.
It was like
Leeds,
It was very much like a fan coming on the pitch and scoring, and the way he reacted and the way he felt and everything. It was like one of us living our ultimate dream of scoring a winning goal for Arsenal. It was very similar to that, and it was very much one of those ones that made all the hair on your arms stand up because of the feeling of the moment as well. And I think that's really important, the feeling it gives you, rather than, like you said, specifically just having to be an important goal. It's something that means a lot to you, and how it made you feel at that point.
Those moments reconnect fans with why they're there as well, and they remind you of the possibility of how you can feel, and they also inspire. You'd hope he would be inspiring whoever was on the pitch at the time. Whatever striker had been struggling all night, I can't remember who it was even now. Who would that have been that time? It's probably Chamak or something.
It was Chamak.
It probably was in the FA Cup,
It's probably at that time, and so it was kind of a reminder of what you can achieve and what you can do, and it's a very simple slot into the corner.
I mean, about your sort of Arsenal sort of fandom, if you like, I presume that it's completely down to your schedule and everything, but do you manage to get down to see many matches at all?
We're season ticket holders, and so I've seen the best and the worst last
great.
years at the Emirates, and which has been a struggle. But I'm a kind of Ronnie Wood of football, because I was hugely into football until I basically discovered the guitar, and then I completely dropped all sport. And through all my teen years, that was just nothing mattered but music. And then really I started going again, actually, around the time the Invincibles. So I kind of missed out great moments. And but it's really
I missed out most of the 90s because of the nights out I was having all the time.
Well, but was a musician then, and it was just a different. My world was completely different. But it was really when I started to have kids, actually, and and we've lived in North London all our lives anyway, and it was just that's just natural. My kids just wanted to get to Arsenal, and that's when we started again. So we are real Emirates fans, for better or worse. That's our era. But,
fantastic.
Yeah, we're season ticket holders, and with the pain that goes with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been certainly a lot of that, but an awful lot of football that I never thought I would see at all. Because I became a fan, around 1980, and had some awful times in the 80s and early part of the 90s, and then when Arsene Wenger came. God, I had to pinch myself seeing some of the football that I was, seeing. I didn't believe it was real at one point. And I remember saying to myself, I've just got to take this all in because it's not going to last forever. And some of the football we've seen, we've been absolutely blessed, really, haven't we?
I think that the reason why there's been such a reaction from some Arsenal fans to what's been some difficult years is that lots of them don't remember what it was like before we turned up. They don't remember wallowing mid-table, Bruce Rioch was in charge, or the struggles in the middle part of the 80s before George Graham turned up and turned that team into something you couldn't score against. We just got used to being the best and presumed that was just part of the DNA of the club. And football is never stands still and doesn't allow you to just roll on without having to deal with adversity, and that's what we're facing now. So it's different times, but this is where you find out just how much of a fan you really are.
Absolutely, yeah.
I find that people who I know from that era are probably more frustrated than me, in a sense. I don't know about you guys, but there is a sense of more frustration, and it's harder to hold on. Whereas for me, and also particularly my kids, if you understand what it's like to be at that age, when there's been a couple of FA Cups, obviously, in the last 10 years, but aside from that, it's kind of all to come, and they have a different perspective, which is worth bearing in mind, and that perspective is more in line with the football that they see around them, and the way the game is in a general way, the way obviously the money and all the other teams, rather than oh come on, why can't we bring Tony Adams back, etc. Why can't we have a defence like that? And so sometimes I'm watching football games not just Arsenal, but games from even the 90s, and you just think, wow, wasn't that good, was it?
Yeah, I know.
These wouldn't survive now, wouldn't last at all.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
a different thing altogether. So it's that perspective. So I'm somewhere in the middle, really, foot on both sides of it. Hopelessly optimistic.
Yeah, no, we have to be.
You have to be, yeah.
Hello, Tayo.
Hello.
How are you? All right?
Yeah, let me get some lights on so I can see what I'm doing. So, sorry to
No problem. Thanks for joining us. Right, it's great to have you on.
It's great to be here. Hello.
Hey, Tayo.
Hello there.
Hey, how are we doing, everyone?
I'd like to do my introductions, as I was just saying. So, Tayo, it's Francis and Bernard.
Hi.
How are you?
We're just going round the first question about the goal.
Yes.
The goal that you would take with you to the desert island. So, what would be your choice, Tayo?
I was going to ask them what them lot said first of all, basically, but that's cheating, isn't it?
It is cheating.
Yeah.
You'll have to listen back.
Well, I mean, the candidates were. Do we do candidates, or should I just get on with it?
You can do. Of course, you can do.
But
Some candidates.
because there's a process. Like, there's Thierry against Spurs, Thierry against Liverpool, Thierry against Leeds would be the closest one, because
one of those was chosen.
Well, yeah, because I made a program about the Return of the King goal, basically, which is
brilliant, yeah,
which is incredible. But because I figured that, but the one that really does do it for me, that I could watch forever, was Righty against Everton.
Amazing goal.
Well, we know the one, right? But in case he doesn't, he puts it. I think it's Gary Ablett, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure who the Everton player was, actually, but
one way the other way, and he lifts it, and then he comes in. The reason why that one means a lot to me, apart from it being amazing, is because I was just out of, when he comes in, there's a blonde guy who, for this day, I'd love to meet him again. He's got like a really, really big tongue, sort of trying to come in the crowd like that. If you watch it again, he comes in the crowd like that. And this geezer's really doing like that. It's got, all I remember, he's got a massive tongue. His tongue's not as big as his head. But he was a few in front of me, and I piled forward. And I mean, I'm 3'7" in heels. So is my 5'6" arms trying to come over, like one of my arms are 5'6", the arms of a 5'6" person trying to come over the top and touch righty. But I couldn't make it that day. But I was in the North Bank that day. I was just out of reach. As this talk will show, he's my idol, as he is most of us if you're a certain age and certainly from South London. So my goal is righty against Everton at Highbury in '93, I think it is. I looked it up before I got here, but I'm pretty sure it's '93.
Great choice. Yeah, it's a great choice. No, I love that goal as well. He's one of my absolute idols, Ian Wright as well. Cause I'm from South London as well, from the Lewisham area.
Right.
My sister, because he was from obviously Norwood, and my sister bought her first house in Norwood, had her first kid in Norwood, and and then I moved to Croydon for the last few years that I was down there, and I used to see him all the time driving around. At the time, it was a convertible Mercedes he had, and he used to drive past the hotel where I was working at the time in South Croydon, and he used to see him quite often and shout, "Oh, right, and all this, and he used to always give me a smile, thumbs up, and wave at me as he was driving past. What legend!
This is the thing. I mean, he feels like everyone's, right? He feels like everyone's, and after he stopped playing for us, then the rest of the country got to share him through Match of the Day and the rest of it. But he's ours, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're of a certain age, I'm from South London. And we had a few South London gooners at that time, Michael Thomas, Paul Davis,
Rocky, of course.
So it just really you connected with me in such a way. And in fact, he's going to come up again later on, so I'll just shut up.
Well, Francis, I'll move on to you for the game. What game would be your choice?
To keep forever?
Yeah. No, to be able to watch whenever you liked on the desert island.
That's such a difficult choice because, as we all know, having lived through so many great moments in the club's history in the last 30 years, but I'm going to go a bit like Bernard for one that came a bit later, and that was the FA Cup final win over Hull City. And our first trophy as a team at the Emirates, because that was the biggest emotional roller coaster of all time. Conceding those two early goals, fuck, it is. It's happening again, and I cannot believe we're falling apart on the big stage. And the third one, which should have gone in, it was cleared off the line. I think it was a Gao Clichy that was back. Was he? Well, Clichy might have been playing for us at that stage. We got one cleared off the line right in the 15 minutes in. It could have been the third that would have ended it. And sitting there, and that came in. The FA Cup used to be a Saturday night affair in Australia, early Sunday morning, 1 a.m. And now they've pushed it back to late on a Sunday afternoon in the UK. So like early Monday morning. So you have to really want to be up to watch it, and sitting in your lounge room watching it on your own because everyone's asleep. There's nothing more desolate than conceding two early goals when you're sitting there on the couch with a cup of coffee going, what am I doing with my life being awake at 4 a.m. watching this? But the comeback was exquisite. The Santi goal was superb. And you want someone to execute in a difficult moment to produce that, to give us a lifeline, and to go on and win that game and just take the monkey off the back a little bit for the team, because it was such an important moment. If you remember the 2011 loss to Birmingham, the calamitous goal that was scored at the
it's got to be one of the ones right up there for the next category.
Yeah, it probably is. But that just it was off the back of that. There was a lot of talk at the time that we'd never win another trophy, moving to the Emirates and whatnot. It was just such a beautiful win, considering where it was heading early on. Not the most historic win in the history of the club, because we've had bigger ones and more important ones, but it was just I was just thrilled for the boss, because he'd been through so much, and I think we still are just understanding now how important his legacy is to our football club because of how difficult we're finding it now, that he made it look easy to qualify for the Champions League year in, year out, with a handicap of restricted budgets during the rebuild of the club after the move to the new stadium and the financial restrictions, and the change in the economic circumstance in football, where the super rich clubs with the oil-rich owners and whatnot were changing the economics of what it took to run a football club. He somehow managed to keep us very much at the top of football's food chain for a very long time. So that was a really special day for me. When the highlights come up with that, and they often do when you're sort of kicking around online looking at old footage, that's the one that gives me the most pleasure.
I think it's got one of the most underrated FA Cup final goals of all time in it as well. That free kick by Cazorla is just phenomenal.
Yeah, that
never gets spoken about.
That was going to be high up on my list, actually, because all the goal. I couldn't remember which final that was. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I remember about that is so beautiful, but he almost couldn't celebrate it because it's like, come on, let's just get on with this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How frustrating to score such an amazing goal in a cup final at Wembley and then have to just pick the ball out and just get on with it,
Yeah, I know. Let's move on to your choice now then. Anyway, Bernard, what is your choice of match?
I mean, the game would be Barcelona at the Emirates.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of unthinkable, really, and it's unthinkable still, and it was at the time. And again, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. What the hell was that guy? That was just the funniest player, wasn't it, for a couple of years?
Yeah, he's very. He was a weird guy. Yeah, because he was so much talent, but
that's a strange talent that seemed to. I'm doing a podcast. Darling, I'm doing a podcast. Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm live on the internet, etc. So Arsenal, this is like Arsene Wenger. Santi Cazorla's watching this right now. What's he thinking? Yeah, well, I think the Barcelona game, it was kind of improbable. Let's face it, we weren't going to go and win it at their place. We weren't going to win the Champions League, but it was just one of those improbable, amazing moments. And also as a game, it was quite a toil. And it was clear that Barcelona were ahead and with the better team in the first half. And it just seemed just one of those strange things where I remember being there and I remember feeling they had just sort of eased off and it was a little bit arrogant. They just sort of seemed to think that this was just easy and this was just going to go their way, and just a couple of amazing things happened. Well, first of all, the Van Persie get a goal, which was a really odd goal from a really, really difficult angle.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember striking it from his left foot at a really improbable angle where you thought, wow, I'm amazed he even tried that. He could have squared it, but he didn't. He shot. It was an amazing shot. But then Arshavin, for that to happen, it was just sort of, wow.
He epitomises the word enigma, doesn't he? I think Arshavin. He had so much quality and talent, but he was just so, I don't know, it was just completely led by mood, by the looks of it. He was just, I can't describe it better than enigma. He was just in and out. He just changed.
There was a big character there, a very odd, very funny character, wasn't he? Almost cartoon-like. Yeah. And remember, he had the was it the Euros or the World Cup just before that?
The World Cup, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, where he was the sensation.
So.
And he scored. Was it the hat trick at Anfield?
He scored four.
Four. And all of those kind of that story was just like, wow, this is good. One of those just out over. And then he does that, and then it just stopped.
It was just random, wasn't it?
It just I don't know what happened after that, but he was quite a character. I really enjoyed watching him, and it felt like the shape. He had that great shape where Messi looks like that. He always looks like he's on wheels. I always think Messi when I see he's sort of, you can't see his feet moving. They're sort of gliding along. that kind of low center of gravity, as they call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Arshavin had that kind of shape as well, where he seemed to zip around. And again, one of those sort of big moments where you can just say, I just remember it being extraordinary. And I remember thinking as well, after we scored, it felt like Barcelona gave up as well, which was also really mad because they were obviously that team was incredible at the time, and they could have come back and they just didn't bother.
No, but they've got a history of that, really, haven't they? Mostly against Liverpool, unfortunately, not against us. which is a bit of a bummer. But there you go.
So
Yeah.
it's been a good moment that you just knew that you were going to go away from there just thinking, well, that's probably not going to happen again.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those nights, wasn't it?
We probably got beaten by Stoke on the Saturday. And
Well, that'd be typical Arsenal, wouldn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember the result after that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
That was a rare feeling. That was a rare feeling, that game, Bernard. You're right. I just remember, like being drunk or anything else. I don't know what kind of show we're talking about. It's a family show, but there's
No, it's not.
all right.
All right, you go ahead. Whatever. I'm joking.
You're out waving or a little bit. There's just a or a bit high, and then there's just a moment. I just remember after that game, just sitting there after the Barcelona game, just sitting there, just going, like, fuck, it could be this good. It was such a serene, still moment of like, it can be this good. And we'll come on to the boss and everything else later on. But that goal, it's a sweeping move. You know, Fabregas I think takes it just past in the center circle, and like it's a beautiful move. It's and then thinking, this is what was supposed to happen. This is what it was supposed to be. This is what second stage or third stage, whatever one we're up to. That's what that Arsenal was supposed to be like.
Yeah.
You know, with that we were supposed to play like this with our little Diddy men who are this good, right? And it just felt like a moment of you could see what we've been trying to achieve at that very moment. And people were like going, you know, all right, but you didn't win anything. And it's those bits as a fan where you just stop for a moment and just go, hold on, this is what we've been trying to get to, you know? Just for a moment, it felt brilliant. It felt, I wouldn't say invincible because we've done that, but it felt very still and brilliant. So that might have been one of my ones. I figured that one would go. I've been toying with a couple of, trying to toy with which of the 5-2s are my favourite. But the Cesc moment would make that one my favourite. But the match that I have gone for is another one which means a lot because I was there. Thing is, the age that I am, 44, 1989 happened to other people.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not my triumph, if that makes sense, as an Arsenal fan. But 98 is. 98 May. So I'd say the Everton game in 98. Because after the run we'd been on, which started at Old Trafford and over Mars, all the way down there, and I knew I had a ticket for this, and this was going to be my first championship because, as I say, 89 happened to someone else, and I love it, and the TV experience was great. I was 14, I was 13 at the time. It happened to someone else. It's incredible. But for that, when I think Bilic, there's a Bilic home goal, first of all, and then Overmars just races away and makes it 2-0. And then you just knew even then that it was going to be a procession. And little known fact, well, it's not a little known fact because it happened, but a little known remembered fact, so Christopher Ray started that game. We had Christopher Ray and Anelka up front for that game. Which made me laugh. We won the league with Christopher, who played a brilliant part in that running, by the way. I think he scored the Wimbledon 1-0.
Yeah.
But of course, the most significant thing about Christopher Ray starting is that Christopher Ray came off and Steve Bold came on, the midfield maestro who put through TA the goal of my life. And I spent most of that season in the North Bank, I think. Yeah, I was in the North Bank most of the season, sitting in the North Bank. And we had seats, me and the girl that I was with at the time was in the West Stand. And I'm convinced to this day, as of course is the rest of the West Stand, that when Tony Adams turned like that, he was looking straight at me. I'm convinced, and no one's telling me any different. And the other good thing about that is that afterwards, that was the afternoon. We have a dispute whether it was that or Newcastle, but that's when I met Keith Dover and Alan Davis.
Oh wow, that day
in Pizza Express, and when
I heard the story on the podcast.
If anyone's a Tuesday Club fan, they'll know about the whole "She Was Nice" story. I used to have dreadlocks, Bernard. If you don't know what I'm talking about,
She was nice.
I used to have dreadlocks. I met Alan Davis and his friend in the doorway at Pizza Express. We did a little dance.
he put one of those kind of football fan kisses on my cheek. It was years later when we were mates, we were talking about this. Alan turned to him and went, "Told you it was a girl. I told you it was a bloke."
Yeah, hilarious.
He just spent years thinking that the girl he kissed in the doorway, she was nice.
Yeah, hilarious.
So for loads of reasons, that's my game to watch forever.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible. I was on the North Bank that night as well. That's where my place was. But it was just so special. It's just that moment again. It's one of those magical moments, isn't it? That Tony Adams. I mean, obviously there's a statue of it now. I mean,
yeah,
it's just incredible. And yeah, if anyone hasn't listened to the Tuesday Club podcast, it's the best podcast ever. It's hilarious, absolutely hilarious, really, really good. And I mean, you're just going on to that a bit more detail. You obviously produce so many podcasts as well. I mean, I listened to a few of the Mondial podcasts, what's it called? The Giant podcast.
Giant.
Yeah, I mean, I heard one today, not yet today, last week, about the Hampton and Richmond Football Club. You produced that as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Incredible work.
Thank you very much.
That was quite moving, that was. It was really quite moving. And did you do the Last Great Rivalry one as well?
I did, yeah. So there's
brilliant.
one.
It's one of my favourites. I love that podcast. I listened to it about 5 times so far.
Oh, bless you. No, there's Arsenal Man United, football's last great rivalry. So we made that series. Yeah, we made that series Giant.
Really good quality, that is.
6. The idea was like This American Life, but for football, right? So just narrative football stories, just like proper kind of in depth. Hopefully, we've done that, and we're just getting started on season 2. So I'll be boring you on that at another time. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I highly recommend that as well.
Cheers.
But I can't. Sorry, Bernard. I'm literally transfixed by those guitars on the back wall there, Bernard. It's just amazing. What a sight that is.
Good. Yeah, that's a lineup there. That's a back four. We'll never get that.
You know when Tayo was saying about he's convinced that Tony Adams was looking at him.
Yeah.
I've had 2 of those moments as well. One of them was you, Bernard. I can't remember where it was. I don't know if it was Brixton. I can't remember. You were in, playing guitar for Suede at the time, and I was right at the front, literally right at the crash barrier, right at the front. I had very, very sharp elbows back then. I was always at the front for everything, and you were in such a position where the light was shining behind you. You looked like some kind of godlike figure because I just saw you as a silhouette with the light shining behind you. And I was like, pointing and looking at you. You know, I had one of those moments where I was convinced that you sort of pointed back at me as well. And I
can tell you that this is the moment you've waited for. That I didn't. Actually,
I had the same moment with John Squire once as well at the Stone Roses, and it's fantastic. Because I spent pretty much throughout the entire 90s, I was just off my head, just going to gigs every single weekend. And if I wasn't going to gigs, I was at the Arsenal. And I can't remember a lot of the 90s, unfortunately, because of the result of that. But what a great time. And I just wish to God that I'd done what you've done. Is it right? You self-taught yourself the guitar from listening to Johnny Marr?
And doesn't it show?
No, I mean, incredible work. Incredible.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, yes, I learned the guitar. Yeah, I mean, I learned the guitar from just learning records. I heard records, and back in the day, when you bought records and proper records, and
I loved it. I love those days.
School and brought them home, and fell in love with the records, and then I learned how to play, and that was my instinct when I was a teenager. And I put in my 10,000 hours, as they say.
I wish I had. But I've got Savoy fingers, unfortunately, which doesn't help when I try and play the guitar.
You probably learned a lot more useful things than me.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, right. I don't know where we are now. We've got where we got to now. You've given your game now, haven't I? I've lost track. You've all done your game.
Yeah. We want to forget now.
Fantastic. So let's move on to you then, Francis. I'll try and speed up a little bit now because I know we've got a lot to get through. So what's the game that you'd like to send to hell?
Well, there's been a few of those queuing up over the last few years, haven't there? The 2 Birmingham experiences still linger in my memory as horror shows. I think the Eduardo injury that day was just so horrific.
And just, wasn't it?
Yeah, just so awful. and the impact it had on the players around him. I mean,
should have won the league that year.
Yeah, well, I think we lost it that day when that happened, and then William Gallas. That was the day that Gallas sat on the pitch and frustrated and moped when he needed to be the captain and get up and take control of things. But that one sticks with me because that was also off the back of the Ramsey experience just previous to that, and it just felt like we were, and teams were coming out to kick us, and that we were being hunted down that way. But that injury that day was awful. Off the back of that, there was there's a couple of other ones like the Carling Cup final or the League Cup final against them as well. But the one that sticks out that I literally hated football the day that it happened was the 8-2 loss to Manchester United in 2011 at the start of that season. I don't think we'd virtually recruited anybody to join the club, or there was hardly anyone coming in. And we went up there. It was just before the close of the transfer window. We're crying out for players to come in. And they spanked us 8-2, and we looked hapless and horrible. We had no defence. I think it was Johan Giroud and Laurent Koscielny in the middle of that defence, and Amand Traoré, who he just looked like he didn't want to be there, and it was just awful. It was, Tayo talked about the great rivalry that it was, and I know we'd had a 6-2 result up there in the midst of that as well, which wasn't so great. We could write that one off as just a really bad day. But this felt like the start of something worse, and it was just abysmal, and I hated it. Funnily enough, I mean, it was the start of a new dawn then, because I think soon after that same week, Mikel Arteta, as well as Per Mertesacker, two people who are now central to the future of our club, came to the club late on in the transfer window and at least righted the ship a little bit so that we were once again able to stay within Champions League reach and whatnot. But that day it was just a horror show, and they lauded it over us. And Ramsey, Rooney, I should say, scored a hat trick. He scored his first ever Premier League goal against us. He just kept on scoring his entire career against us. It was just the worst. Put it in the bin, set it on fire, and roll it down the hill. I never want to see it again, Andrew.
Yeah, that was my choice as well. At the beginning, I hated that. Absolutely hated it. It made me feel so miserable for ages as well. Literally, well, it still does. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, and
Bernard. Sorry.
Yeah, just here in Australia, because we watch it in isolation alone at weird times. So, at least if you're in the crowd or you're with people, you can sort of carry the load. But often you're just sitting here going, "What is?" You just have to internalize all the frustration and disgust, and then sort of crawl back into bed at 6 a.m. and the wife will say, "Oh, what happened?" You go, "Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it."
I was still cowering in the corner of the shower at 6 a.m. like trying to wash it all off me. I think, to be honest, trying to scrub myself clean after that, watching that. Anyway, Bernard, what was your choice for the game you'd like to send to hell?
It's funny Francis mentions being far away and the time difference and stuff. This isn't my worst one, but it's. I remember being in Tokyo a couple of years ago, and because of the time difference there, we were playing, and the only way you can find somewhere is to find the British pub, in Tokyo, which is always a slightly ridiculous place because the buildings, you go into buildings that look like offices or something, and you go up a lift. And then suddenly walk in, and there's oak panels everywhere, and fish and chips. And,
wow! How weird.
You get these British pubs in the centre of Tokyo that do this, and it's such a weird thing. And so Japanese couples eating fried egg and chips as a kind of delicacy. But I remember going with a friend and going to finding the West Ham game, and it just falling apart. And it just been it was a couple of years ago now, and I can't remember exactly the result. I think we may have lost. It was West Ham away, but it was just so farcical because of the time difference and the surreal setting that I was thinking in some ways when you've got that weird time zone, it sort of takes you away from the misery. But probably my most miserable one in a weird way is that sticks in my head. Well, there's Olympiacos recently, which was truly surreal and just distressing, and of course the Birmingham League Cup as well. But what sticks in my head is a couple of years ago, I made the really daft idea to head to the Hawthorns on New Year's Eve. I just thought that would be a brilliant thing. I hate New Year's Eve anyway. I hate the whole. I'm just not a New Year's Eve person. I don't really care.
No,
You
join
know,
the club.
and to find some extraordinary things. I thought, yeah, let's do that. Hawthorns, that's going to be great. And you know what? That's 3 points in the bag. Come on, that's going to be easy. Of course it is. And forgetting, of course, that we've been to the Hawthorns the year before as well and suffered a similar misery. And yeah, it was a rubbish game. Mike Dean was refereeing. I mean,
No, it says it all.
and Mike Dean was refereeing, you know, and I think Kieran Gibbs was alleged to have handballed it off his knee or something mad in you know, the 90th minute penalty. And it wasn't actually a loss. It was we did draw in the end, but it was just such a depressing game. And especially that period, it was at that time when just we could not win away, and nothing would go right. The fans were so agitated, and just things just felt slightly unfair, which is really selfish and really stupid as an Arsenal fan, because generally things are not that bad. You know, they're really not that compared to being a West Brom fan, you know. And you really get a feeling for that when you go to somewhere like the Hawthorns, and you know, with the greatest respect to anyone who lives around the Hawthorns, it's not that beautiful around there. You know, it's just off the motorway, and it's grey. I remember being a grey day, and for the West Brom fans, it meant absolutely everything. It was the beautiful thing that could ever happen. A London team crawling up there, thinking, you know, they're going to get one over. And so yeah, that's just a really sticks in my memory, quite a recent one. And of course, then you've got a 3-hour drive back to London on New Year's Eve. You know, irreversible. Just thinking, wow, why did we do that? Why? All I'm going to get is when I get home, why did you bother doing that?
Yeah, I know. I got so many nights like that. So many.
It was one of those that'd be like, why did you put yourself through that?
Yeah, I know.
Moments.
But then the next game comes along and everything's forgotten. And then just before kickoff, you think, you know, everything's going to be turned around from that moment on. When you're watching that game, everything's going to be great now. You're oh, it's weird. But do you, Tayo? But you do you DJ most New Year's Eves?
Yeah, well, I used to in the old life. Yeah, I mean these days,
you don't do it no more.
Yeah, these days not so much. But for about 15, 20 years, 15 years. But look, I mean, it was a laugh to start with because I got to travel a lot, like, you know, band in a band kind of thing. It's fun traveling. Then it's a bit of a nose, but it pays for January and February and March.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now I play in the pub down the road, which is my local pub, which is the Gun, and I have the best time. Was that, like, I can walk home and I play with my mates at a disco. So yeah, we got there that way. But yeah, as far as Arsenal going to wipe from history,
yeah,
this was the easiest one. Leeds 99, no fucking question. Like Leeds. Again, if you've heard me rant before, then there is no game that I hate more than the 1-0 at Ellen Road. O'Leary being a prick on the sideline, probably when it was that season when he was like probably just desecrating his entire Arsenal memory by being a pain, picking a Robert Pitt.
Yeah.
Kabadiawara hitting the post for fun. I've gone up there. It was at the early days of my. I used to go away a lot more, and my mates will take the piss out of me because I never go anymore. And I went up with DJ Giles Peterson.
Oh, right, okay.
Driving up there, gave me a call on the day, said, "Do you want to come up?" And I was really excited. Like, I mean, he's more of a friend now than he was then. We were getting friends. Obviously, I'm away. We were playing music with all his friends, and it was great fun. Getting really excited to go away with one of my mates who's also a big Arsenal fan, and we were about this close to winning the league. And then Nelson Vivas came off the bench, let Hasselbank go, and I will never, ever, ever, ever forgive him for that, because that was the start. I hold him entirely responsible for the treble and Sheringham and the rest of it. It all came from them winning the league that way. I just can't get over that match. I could go on about it all day. No one needs that. Burners need to go at some point, but that is 100%. That is 100% the match that I would like to wipe from history. I have never got over it. I never will. the fact that Vivas, by the way, had the number 7 shirt for a while.
Oh, that was just ridiculous. I couldn't believe that.
Disgrace. Only on a par with Gallas having a number.
Gallas having 10. I was just about to say, that is even worse.
So I'm done.
Yeah,
I tell you a little weird little William Gallas story. That one of those moments you wish you had again. So at the end of his career, he came and played in Australia. So he came and played in the A-League, which is our professional league. He played at Perth Glory. So Perth is the most isolated city in the capital city in the world, on the west coast of Western Australia. My sister lives there, and she lives in the northern suburbs of Perth, a nice part of Perth. There's this beautiful big marina there where you can go and watch the sunset and eat dinner over the Indian Ocean. Perfect. One day I went over at Christmas time visiting my sister. Pulled up into the car park. The car park was relatively empty. Get out of my car. Someone pulls up right next to me and gets out of the car to go and have dinner. I'm coming to leave after dinner, and it's William Gallas. Like, it's in the middle of nowhere. He just gets out of the car, and all those things came flooding back to me, Tayo.
Was he on his own? Or?
No, he was there with his family.
I was going to say, you would have had every opportunity then. No one would have seen you. You'd have been in the middle of nowhere.
The hoardings on the advertising. And
could have buried his body in the outback. No one would have known.
The great white shark off the coast of Perth. There are plenty of them. But it's just one of those weird ones. There's no one else in the car park, just me and William Gallas. And I'm going in the middle of Perth, and all the things that I wanted to say were building up inside. My wife just said to me, "Get in the car."
Wash that number 10 out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Of all the places in all the world, I missed my chance to tell him what I really thought.
Oh, what an idiot he is. Anyway, so there's so many that I'd like to send to hell as well, but those especially some players as well. But yeah, William Gallas will be top of the list of that. One of the top of the list. Right, one song for the Wenger era. I'm so engrossed into what everyone's saying. I'm making sure that I'm actually up to date on everything. Has everyone had their choice for? Are we up to date on that? Yeah. I just wanted to double check because I didn't want to leave anyone out. So the song, Francis, it's back to you, isn't it? Your song for the Wenger era. What would be best describe the Wenger era for you? Well,
I'm going to pitch one of Bernard's moments and pick Suede's "Stay Together" as my song. For us in Wenger. It did feel like we were all in a long-term relationship with him in one way or another. And, there were bittersweet moments. I tend to, like most of us now, can just focus on the great things that he did at our club and how he transformed our club. And he transformed football, but also that he taught us, and I thought his goodbye speech at the Emirates was beautiful in that regard. He taught us about what football could mean in our wider lives and how to conduct yourself with class and dignity. And he's such a wonderful person. And it was such a privilege to have him in your life every weekend or throughout the week during the football season. It was, even when we got frustrated with him towards the end when things weren't working, I was a fierce defender of his. My loyalty is probably one of the things that is both one of my great strengths, but at times can be a weakness as well, because sometimes you've got to know when to let go. And I miss him. I miss the attitude. I miss the value set that he brought to the club. And I'm hoping that Arteta, in his own way, has his own version of that. I get a sense that he does. And I think that's really critical to a football club like ours that can't compete necessarily in the same terms financially as the big dog in the competition and around the world these days. But if we carry ourselves with a certain value set and approach to the game, then that will sustain us in ways and provide for us the sort of success that we want. Maybe not as often as we want, but it will happen. So, yeah, it's such a crucial part of my life, footballing wise, but just generally, because he was always there. And I miss him. And I hope he's happy. It's funny. I just hope he's happy. And I really hurt me when people were shouting at him and calling for his head on a stick. I felt like they were shouting at Dad. It was just like,
exactly. I'm just glad that when he left, it was just a relief in the end, because hopefully he would just start getting over all that. I hate to see him being shouted at all the time, all the the toxic stuff that he used to come up against all the time, and it must have been horrible. You know, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, he's human. He's going to have feelings, and I was glad when it was all over, and hopefully, you know, start getting over all that stuff. But yeah, I know what you mean.
I could never have brought myself to behave that way towards him.
I can't wait for his book, by the way.
Yeah,
as well.
I think we're all hanging out for that.
I
Definitely.
ordered another one because they just I was alerted on Twitter about that Waterstones had got some more signed copies, so I ordered another one a few days ago because the one I ordered, I missed all the first batch of signed copies. So yeah, I was quite happy to get one in the end. So what was your choice for that then, Bernard?
I'm going to go for "You're Going to Make Me Lonesome When You Go" by Bob Dylan.
Oh, yeah,
The same ridiculous reasons as Francis. I'm glad you're as sentimental about it as me, actually, because it was it's odd how you talk about him almost like a personal relationship, and that is really for someone in that position in any field, in any sporting field, really, but particularly in football at the moment. Can't really think of anyone else anywhere where the fans would have that relation, you know, that thought process, almost like you're saying, like you're shouting at Dad. I like that. I agree with you. You know, I used to feel sad when, you know, I remember moments where, I don't know, it's somewhere like West Brom probably or Stoke where fans started shouting abuse at the train station or something.
That was Stoke, yeah.
Yeah, horrible incident like that. And I just remember feeling so sad about that kind of stuff. And I used to feel genuinely when we lost or when we messed it up, more to the point, in those during those later years, I used to feel a twinge of just like, oh God, the guy is going to be killing himself about this. And there was something about it that I just always felt that I knew it'd be sad about it, and I think you're going to make me lonesome when you go, because I always knew that it would be a lonely transition, and that as we all, you know, we've all got our opinion on when it should have happened. I don't think anybody would say now, even the diehards like me, that it shouldn't have happened. So I think we're happy that did happen. Maybe it should have happened after one of the FA Cups. That's probably the
I think so.
Obvious things. But beyond all that, still, when it happened, you knew that it was going to be lonely, and I think it was. And I think it was lonely is how it felt for those couple of every years. You know, just lonely as a club identity, football identity, player identity, and that personal connection. Because none of us, we couldn't even laugh at the sleeping bag coat zip and stuff and all that sort of thing. You know, and you know, standing on having to stand in the stand at Old Trafford and all those mad things that happened, and you know, the incredibly articulate and enigmatic press conferences as well. You know, that sense where you can hang on lines that he said. And I don't know what it's like with all your professions, you know, but I think it applies to any profession, but certainly with me as a musician or being, you know, responsible for groups of people and trying to direct people to do something, but trying to inspire people. I found it personally really inspiring. I used to hang on the guy on what he said and how he behaved and the successes and the failures and how to deal with it, because I found that in my work with music and very inspiring. And I think that's because he viewed it as kind of an art form. And however ludicrous that seemed, and however short-sighted that seemed, you know, when you get beaten by Stoke.
Yeah, I know.
You know, he did have that kind of that sort of higher view of things, which is really rare, I think, and really, you know, it's really rare in sport, and you cling to those moments. So yeah, I think that's gonna have to be my one.
Yeah, great one. Yeah, great, good choice.
Andrew, these two have finished me off, man. I'm in the I'm all up in my feelings. I'm all up in my feelings right now.
Well, you wait until we get onto the next category, mate. Honestly, seriously.
I couldn't have said it. I couldn't have said it any better, because, and with the abuse that he got, and it's funny because, and I mentioned it with 98.
The song, sorry to cut in, the songs that mostly the Man United fans used to sing about him. Do you remember? I ain't gonna say, give the name. I mean, that was just oh God, that was just horrendous. I felt so sorry for the guy.
That started with him calling him out on the steps of the conference, basically. You know,
yeah, did.
Decent guy, but yeah, I think I'm that sweet spot of, you know, there's a lot of the kind of Cannon's Wrong Way Round, George Graham, you know, and I said before, that was my sweet spot of Arsenal coincides with, my career, leaving university and getting into my career, and my life was that period, right? So that's how I feel about him. The song I chose it's written by John Williams, and is actually half thinking from a film point of view. It's called The Long Goodbye. And the film The Long Goodbye is an Elliot Gould. It's a Robert Altman movie with Elliot Gould in it. It's a brilliant movie if anyone hasn't seen it. All the way through it, they use The Long Goodbye, this song, and it's different versions of the song throughout the movie. It's a fantastic movie, 1973. Sterling Hayden, Elliot Gould, if you get the chance to see it.
I haven't seen it. Yeah, I will do.
It's amazing. But The Long Goodbye is Raymond Chandler's detective, Philip Marlowe, right? And I was reading about it just before I came here, and there's one quote about it, about Marlowe. If you know, Marlowe was a private detective, hated by the cops, hated by the bad guys, in this kind of sweet spot in the middle of morality. And he says, and this is something that was described about the film, I wrote it down so I don't forget, a moral and decent man cast adrift by a selfish, self-obsessed society where lives can be thrown away without a backward glance, right? Wow. And this, so in the movie, it's moved to the 70s in a kind of free-loving 70s LA, and Marlowe doesn't quite fit in. He's this very moral character in the middle of it. And you know what? That's what Arsene Wenger was. And the maelstrom of football changing with FFP, everything that he said kind of happened. And I know that he was set up as a clown figure. He was this, as you say, him being in the stand, him with his zip. This is, he got absolutely effed over by Bernard Tapie in France before he got to us. For all the successes he's got, there's an asterisk about some of his things have happened to him, which his morality has kind of made him suffer in a world. Football's not made for someone like him to have that kind of feeling and that morality in a game which is changing. So he feels like an anachronism, especially certainly at the end. He felt like this kind of Cassandra layering out the kind of things that were about to happen in football as they were happening around him. So for those two things, he reminds me of Marlowe in one of my favorite films, and The Long Goodbye song is fantastic. That's my song.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great choice. I prefer the Marlowe one than the Clouseau one.
Right.
But I must admit, Ray Parlour's story about Arsene Wenger, when he called it, about the Clouseau moment. I don't know whether you know what I'm going to say. When they went out onto the pitch and he was delayed because he was on the loo or something. Wenger was. They walked out onto the pitch and there was the match was not postponed. I don't know, it was postponed.
It was the Wimbledon game with the floodlight.
The floodlight failure, wasn't it? Yeah, and they came back into the changing rooms and he was coming out to the toilet and he said, "What is going on?" And and when Ray Parlour said, "There is a bomb." A bomb? Yeah, it's just one of the best stories ever, the way he says it. And it's just the way he said, and Arsene Wenger went, "A bomb?" It's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I miss him as well. I miss him terribly. I really do. So let's move on back to you now, Francis, for your choice of song for the Emery era. And I'll put this. I have to put this one. I don't like remembering that there was an Emery era, to be perfectly honest, try and block the whole thing out of my mind. But I like to shove it in just for a bit of a comedy moment, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Era is giving it far too much credence. It was an interlude. It was a dalliance that didn't quite happen. That's it. It was such a weird thing. It didn't work. It was. I'm going to choose one of my favourite sort of like cheesy 70s tunes by the songwriter Carol Bayer Sager. "You're Moving Out Today," which so pack all your talking, your pretty boys away, your 45s away, your alibis away, your Spanish flies away, your one more tries away, your old tie dyes away. You're moving out today. Get out.
Brilliant.
Well, one of the great songs. It was such a weird time. There was always in every sport, I think there's always the transition. The guy that takes on the job after the guy is never going to survive. It's virtually impossible to transition from a Wenger or a Ferguson to somebody who can seamlessly carry the culture, the success of the club forward. And he was the patsy in a way for that. There are some frustrations around that because we could have had Mikel Arteta. We could be 3 years into the Arteta project now.
I know, yeah.
Maybe we could have got away with it. Or you could flip that and say, well, thank God it wasn't Mikel at the start because it would have been too difficult. And what we're hoping to see emerge from, and we're seeing the green shoots of in the last little while might have been dead on a roll because it's just too difficult to do that job straight off the back of someone who's been so dominant force of the club for so very long. But that last 2 or 3 months of the Emery era were just awful. And that Manchester City game, we didn't talk about that Manchester City game in the matches we'd want to see erased from history. But and Arteta talks about sitting there watching what was happening. We just walked through that game. At the end of that Emery era, he had already gone, but just the fact that we've been emptied out. The club had been absolutely emptied out by the time that he left, and that was a very low ebb. So I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad we've finally got a guy that understands the club in the job, and hopefully we can move forward. Knowing people that have worked at the club and have played at the club, like you all do, there's a lot that needs to be changed. There's a lot of attitudes and cultures within the club, within the dressing room that needed to change. And we know that the guy they've got in charge now understands that better than any because he was one of the catalysts towards changing it and steadying the ship at a really difficult period. And that needs to happen again. And I'm hoping that will start to shine through. Obviously, the Aubameyang signing would be a catalyst for that. Saka as well. We need these players to buy into what he's doing. And because the only way we're going to have success is that the force of personality and the culture of the boss will dictate the future of our club because people are going to have to want to play for that person.
Well, yeah, obviously, in the next category, we can talk a lot more about that and what needs to sort of to happen, really, but and how we're feeling about it generally overall. But your choice of song. Yeah, absolutely perfect. Perfect as far as I'm concerned. Bernard, what's your choice for that?
I'm going for No Regret by the Walker Brothers.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
No tears, goodbye. I don't want you back. We'd only cry.
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. I love the choices tonight. Honestly, they're great.
I mean, as Francis said, you had to have transition. It always goes wrong, but it has to happen, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Arteta, was he in the right? I mean, he's so formative anyway in that role, and even in the role he's with us now, you have to accept that he's learning as we're learning with him, as a coach. And would he even a couple of years earlier, would he have been ready? I don't know. Would that have been really bad for him as well as a coach, generally, and his position with us? So I'm not sure that would have been a good idea.
No, I don't really. I was being a bit sarcastic. I think it would have been a bit too early. I think those extra 18 months could have done him the world of good with under Pep. But yeah, you're right. Really, it's completely irrelevant, and there's no. But I think the perfect guy in between would have been like Rafa Benitez, someone like that. Just to steady the ship for a couple of years. And I think remember when he was in temporary charge of Chelsea. And he was getting vilified when he literally had to go out and speak to his own fans and say, look, I'm leaving at the end of the season. There's no point in keeping on shouting and chanting all your vile stuff at me because I'm going anyway. So just get behind the team. And he handled that brilliantly. And they won the Europa League that year, didn't they, under him? So I think he would have been a good choice, really, just to steady the ship. But there's nothing we can do about it now.
It was a hangover. I mean, it was literally the hangover. You just had to get through it, crawl your way through it, get to the other side, and know that then you could start again. And I think that's the way viewed. And also Arteta had, Francis pointed out, had to see that in a way. He had to see that Man City game from their perspective. Such an odd day. I remember so well. De Bruyne was so fantastic that day, and I just kind of enjoyed watching. It's one of those weird games when I've enjoyed watching the other team. I thought, this is what a player! I love watching him. He's great.
Kevin De Bruyne, he's unbelievable, isn't he?
And having Arteta on the other bench that day with the shadow hanging over it, I think was actually maybe there was something really good about that. But Emery, I don't know, probably a decent human being there. and probably just couldn't cope. Was the wrong person thrown into it. We didn't connect with him. We didn't connect with this football, and I think most of all, the players didn't connect. Now, whatever we're kind of idiots that stand shouting stuff, and we don't really know what happens, on the coaching pitch and the dressing rooms, and we don't know the power of when Wenger was at his most charismatic, how inspirational he could be, how he could get the best out of some average players, as he did. Some great, some very average people who we got to second in the league, and how conversely, someone like an Emery just loses the dressing room and just doesn't have that inspirational element over some world-class players.
Yeah, I know.
So that affects the Emery. That must have been bad for him as well. I don't really have any sympathy for him, but as a human being, when you've got no cards left to play in that position, and you've got a striker like Aubameyang in your team, and you've isolated Mesut Ozil, that was just kind of absurd kind of hangover period. So had to happen. Don't regret it, but good.
Yeah, I know. Get good riddance. Exactly. I think the last 3 or 4 months, I'd given up blaming him at all. He needed to be put out of his misery, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. There's a big role in the club, isn't there? The upstairs and stuff. Why no one made the move?
My one bit of advice to him would be stop going out with white witches. And hopefully his life might turn around. What's yours, Tayo?
Well, a song that I really love from the Low album, David Bowie's Low album, is A New Career in a New Town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of imagine, I always think that when I go to a new city myself or whatever, I could just imagine like Emery turning up with his like kind of handkerchief tied to a stick. Right?
Yeah.
And probably not Gatwick because it doesn't feel right. I reckon he came in a Southend. You know what I mean? Like, which set the tone for his kind of thing. Looking around, going. But more realistically, there's a Pablo Gaddel's and a reggae singer from 1980. You probably recognise. I think the Prodigy sampled him. Like when I was a youth, I used to bun Cali weed in Orisla.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the Prodigy sampled it on Fire. But anyway, but Pablo Gad, Hard Times, basically. That's my song for that era.
Fantastic.
Can't believe I didn't go for Always Crashing in the Same Car from that
album. The clown car that was Emery's Arsenal. Yeah.
Clown car, yeah. Exactly. Right, what about the Arteta era then, Francis? What would be your song to summarise that?
A soul classic by Peaches and Herbs, Reunited, because it feels so good.
Yeah. Definitely.
I was lucky enough because my trips to see the Arsenal play intermittent because it was so far away. But I was lucky enough to be there in London in December. It might have even been December. It was for his first home game against Chelsea. No, we didn't win that day. You're probably there, but
played well though.
Yeah, played really well. But just it was the energy in the stadium when particularly that first half an hour when the team walked out, and it felt like it had that trademark feel about what Arsenal were about. And we were unlucky to lose that day, but it just felt right. It felt like we were in charge by someone who understands the club, is passionate about the club. And I think he talked to anyone who played with him as captain. It meant everything to him to play for Arsenal. And he's going to demand the highest levels of commitment and will be exhaustive in his attempts to improve what happens on the pitch. So I love having him there. I love that he has a level of ferocity and focus that we need. And I always admired him as a player. So it's good having an Arsenal person back in charge of our football club. And it seems that they're finally understanding that with the way they're building the backroom staff as well, getting the right people back there that understand the club and have the club's best interests at heart. I've always been suspicious of when we've had, in the brief moments where you have to outsource your expertise to people who might know a lot about football but don't understand the club as such. So, yeah, I'll go with Peaches and Herbs Reunited. And let's hope that what a weird start to his Arsenal coaching career. How odd.
I know.
He's had to live through the pandemic. It's so odd. I think he's been in charge for 10 games so far.
Yeah, I think so. And I
More
think
than that.
it's weird though, but him coming down with the coronavirus,
It's
it's something I didn't really think of. But I mean, him getting it at that point could have saved thousands of lives because that they were going to carry on with all the rest of the matches that weekend, weren't they? The Premier League.
Yeah.
But it's only when he got it that they cancelled all those games. So he saved all of those fans that would have gone to all of those games. I don't know how many that would have been in total, but several, quite a lot of thousands. And thank God for that, really. But
I just feel like we're in the right hands at this particular point in the history of our club. I think
I can't see any negatives specifically with him at the moment, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the last few weeks has brought, really, with the time he's had with not obviously face to face with the players, but with the players to talk to with that time that he wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's quite interesting now.
I would say that his success might lie on just how much influence he can have in the transfer market. However that looks in going into the future. Who knows how that looks? Who knows what the football economy looks like now that we've had this cataclysmic event in all of our lives.
Yeah.
But it just felt like in the Emery era it was a bit hands off, and that the culture of agents determining which footballers came to our club was starting to creep in. And that we were just a little bit being manipulated a little bit by agents who were the right people for the club. In order to do one deal, we have to accept another. And I hope that he has the force of character to get the players that he wants and not just be sort of shunted to the sideline as other people make decisions for him.
Listen, can I just ask as well? We were obviously slightly overrunning. Are you all okay just to finish off this last couple of questions, or do you need to get off?
Fine.
Great. Okay, that's fantastic. Well, we'll try and get through them as quick as we can. But so, what would be your choice then, Bernard, for your song for Arteta?
Nick Drake's "Time Has Told Me." You were a rare find, and just because I think there's following on really from the Emery thing, the fact that I feel like it had to happen, and transitions have to go that way, and I feel that. Things that seem obvious at the time, actually experience just tells you that things happen at the right time, and it sounds all mystical, but it is just the truth of the way that evolved. I think he's a rare character. I think he's interesting as an Arsenal player because I kind of remember at the time he came in as the Fabregas replacement, and everybody knew he wasn't quite Fabregas, and he was never going to live up to that. But he did fit into that role really well and had amazing moments. But he had this very calm sort of authority on the pitch as a player, which you wanted. You wanted him to do well, and you wanted good things. People loved him. People felt good about him, and I think that's what's come home and come back to us. There's that calm sense of calm and authority and intelligence. But I probably wouldn't have spotted it at the time and joined the dots whenever that was 7 or 8 years ago. But now it feels to make perfect sense, that sense of articulation and common sense and calmness and focus that he sort of projects. And that's sort of, that's always going to work better than going for, I don't know, someone from a random Spanish team and taking a...
Well, he was playing out of position, let's not forget, when he actually came over as a player. Well, he wasn't a deep lying player, more of a defensive player, was he? He never was, but he played that role, and he always gave 100% commitment on the pitch whenever he was picked. But he was very demanding as the captain as well. I don't know if you saw. I mean, I love the phone calls that Ian Wright's been making on on YouTube. I don't know if you've been watching any of those.
Yeah.
And when he spoke to Arteta and. He made the phone call to Per Mertesacker as well, and Per said when he was his vice captain, wasn't he, Per? And he said he was very demanding of him as well when he was, and he demanded that he backed him up at all times and everything. And he was absolutely delighted when Arteta got the job, and I think we're in good hands really with Arteta and Per Mertesacker especially. I think Per Mertesacker is a fantastic bloke, and him being in charge of the academy fills me full of confidence as well. So. yeah, I just can't wait to see the team he's going to pick tomorrow and how we're going to play. And I just hope that we can, in some ways, go toe to toe with Man City and surprise them with our commitment tomorrow.
Taught us that patience. I think Emery is well known. He had 2 years to get us into the top four or do something. And I just don't have that feeling about Arteta that expectation is there, and that it's taught you that you need to look long term, and that's experience shows you that. It's the right outlook. He doesn't have that pressure, and you don't feel like you need to put that pressure on him. We had that pressure on Emery from the start, all the way through.
I think he's the sort of person that puts all the pressure on himself, though. I think that comes across with him. I don't think he needs anyone to put any pressure on him, because I honestly think that would be the case. What about you, Tayo? What would be your Arteta song?
Where Are We Going by Marvin Gaye. It was one of the ones off an album that was shelved. It's a brilliant production. It came out years later. Producers called the Mazel Brothers. In case you're interested, you should find out. And that's just it, really. It's very, very difficult. Like you guys have said before, it's like Arteta's comes in. This complete mental thing happens in the middle. He's got players. He's got a squad that he wouldn't have asked for. He's got players who want to leave or will want to leave. And I don't know what. I'm glad that we got out of it. One of my other choices was Otis Clay, The Only Way Is Up, that version, because after I just didn't want to go. I mean, I know I'm not the only one. I'm not saying anything no one said before. I just didn't want to go anymore.
No, I didn't. It was a chore, wasn't it? Watching the team.
It was an absolute chore. Like, at least there were beautiful defeats and terrible defeats under Arsene Wenger, and we didn't want those again. But just bored. I hated going. Went in spite of myself. That comes into one of the answers later on. So where are we going now? I don't have a clue. I'm not quite excited yet. We'll see when they're coming out on the pitch. I'm not quite excited about tomorrow, is that? But I just want to know what we are as a club moving forward, because we're slipping further away from the top. We don't know where we are in terms of ownership or investment or ideas, and therefore we've got a coach who we need a coach now. We need a coach who can turn around what he's going to be given, because what he's going to be given isn't going to be as good as he's going to want. So can he bring a place or two out of them by being the coach that he seems to be, and that all previous players keep talking about? And let's hope he gets the support for it. So yeah, where are we going? I just genuinely don't know. This disconnect from football right now is a very difficult one. I don't know what the hell is going on with him at the club and what he can do.
Well, I mean, I'm really excited, not just by him, but by the academy graduates we've got come through now, and I just can't wait to see how they're going to develop, and I hope they get the chance. I mean, like Emil Smith-Rowe, who's on loan at Huddersfield, I think he's going to be absolute quality. I'm really excited to see what Arteta can do with all these young guys, and Willock and Saka and Reece Nelson, and that's what I'm really. I just hope that they can stay with us for a while, just so we can, see them grow and blossom. I just I think
our way to compete is to grow our own players now, because we can't compete by buying in top end talent, particularly if we're not playing top level European football. If that turns out to be the way, we need to grow our own talent to be competitive again. And it seems that there is certainly the capacity to do that. So I think we've got the right people in place to give us a shot at. And there's nothing better than watching an Arsenal lad score for Arsenal. I mean, it's the best. I mean, isn't it great watching Eddie and Kedia sticking them away at the moment, and players like that who've had to work really hard to get an opportunity and to see off the talent that's brought in to be given a chance for Arsenal. And they're the players you treasure the most.
Exactly, I do. I know it's the best crop we've had since the mid-'80s, isn't it? I think of actual homegrown talent. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where they can go. But what's onto the second to last really, but the last Arsenal question is the film. What film best summarises your Arsenal life, Francis? What would you choose for that?
Oh, I think I'm an old romantic, Andrew, and I'm going to go with 1957's classic "An Affair to Remember," starring Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr. Now, this film is a beautiful romance film. These two meet on a transatlantic liner crossing from Europe to New York, but they're currently engaged to other people. And after a series of meetings, they fall in love and they agree to reunite at the top of the Empire State Building in 6 months if they haven't succeeded in ending their relationship and starting new careers. And to me, that's what Arsenal is. Every time it looks like it breaks my heart, I always want to go back to the top of the Empire State Building and meet again.
Meet King Kong up there.
Time and time again. If you speak to my family, they will tell you that there's three people in our, to my wife, there are 3 people in our marriage, and one of them is Arsenal. The amount of time and money and energy it's taken for me to follow the club distance. So that's the film for me, and the romance is still there. And even though we have those disillusioning moments like that bizarre Man City game in December, it only takes one fine performance, or the win against Manchester United at home, which I was also there for. Luckily, a couple of weeks later, or it might have been just a week later. That's all the pain. A win like that under Arteta at home. It sees all the rest of it away. So that's the film that I would go with. Such a sucker for a beautiful
that's lovely.
Epic story like that.
Absolutely. And Bernard, what's about yourself? What do you choose?
Complete opposite. I mean, just literally first one that came to my mind, but that says a lot about this choice. But The Lighthouse, which was out a couple of years ago, Robert Pattinson, and if anyone saw that, is this incredibly harrowing black and white movie, and about a lighthouse who has a young sailor stuck on this island with him, and what happens over the course of the winter. And it's just it's on the one hand harrowing all the way through, and on all these very psychedelic moments where the lighthouseman finds himself staring into the light in the lighthouse, and having these hallucinatory moments, and then followed by these moments of pure ecstasy and beautiful moments, and but fear, anxiety, panic,
that's 98% of it, isn't it?
And feeling like you're just never going to get off.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that sums me up as well. Yeah, definitely.
Coming out the cinema, we're both saying, was that any good? Or there's films where you're not sure, and it sticks in your mind so much you think, well, that must mean it was good, but I'm not sure what it is I like about this.
I felt like that about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That's just like a weird one as well, isn't it? I don't know how I felt about that. Now, Tayo, what would be your choice?
Yeah, the one thing that kept on coming back to me, there's a film from, I think, 94, sort of 90s noir called The Last Seduction. And it's with Linda Fiorentino, who's basically flipping the noir thing on the head. Basically, she has blokes just wound around her finger for the entire film, basically them doing her bidding. She always comes out top. And I just thought, and I'm just remembering the lead, the main guy in it who gets wound around Linda Fiorentino's finger. And that's just sort of how I feel about Arsenal. Sort of like they've done everything to me. They've left me on the side of the road. They've like made me happy. They've kind of, they had me in the back of their lorry, and I've said I'm not that kind of girl, but there I am. I'm not that kind of guy, but all of that, and ultimately, because as I always say, football's a cruel mistress. It just made me think of just this. Yeah, they'll keep on doing stuff, and I'll stamp my foot, and I'll see you next week. Really, so yeah.
So you're just spinning on her finger.
I'm just like I'm just
metaphorically spinning on the finger.
Tana Marie said, "I'm just a sucker for their love." So yeah, The Last Seduction.
Yeah, fantastic, great. I mean, I must admit the choices have been absolutely amazing tonight. It's really, really good, and not really specifically Arsenal related, but it might, it can be if you want it to be. But your luxury item that they always have on Desert Island Disks, what would yours be, Francis?
Well, my luxury item in terms of something that I would take with me. Oh, gee,
yeah.
That's well. I do have. It is Arsenal related, and it is my it's an encyclopedia that was published about 20 years ago of the Arsenal, which I managed to get Patrick Vieira and a couple of players. Yeah,
what's it called? It was the Arsenal.
Yeah, I've got it on my shelf up there somewhere. It was in 2001. At the end of 2001, the French national team came to Australia to play friendly, and there were a number of Arsenal players in that squad, and I managed to like a bad pop fan, just like camp out in front of hotels and get my book signed, and meet Patrick Vieira, and I was so in awe of Patrick Vieira. Yeah. So that to me is still special. I'll take that and read that and take my happy memories with me.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's amazing. I mean, if there's one person I'd ever want to have a meal with, going back to what we were talking about before, it's Arsene Wenger. I mean, I'd give anything that I had to go and have a few hours just chatting with him over a couple of cups of coffee or a few beers or whatever.
Would you want him on the desert island with you?
No, I wouldn't want that. Just a few hours would do. Just a few hours.
Imagine trying to fill the boat or something, or trying to, he'd be useless.
He would have the knowledge up there somewhere. He's like, Rain Man. I think he knows something about everything, doesn't he? Really,
falling over and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least with his coat, we could turn it into a tent. It's that big, couldn't we? And just sort of sleep under it. It'd be a bit of shelter.
Yeah.
But yeah, what would yours be, Bernard? What would be your luxury item?
Probably obvious that we're not an Arsenal thing at all, really. I mean, I wouldn't want to take a scarf particularly. Probably want to leave the whole thing behind, actually, as a memory.
Yeah.
Probably a red guitar, one of those. Probably that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Things, that kind of sticks.
Amazing.
Taxi. It's kind of beautiful guitar that I bought 25 years ago or more. Felt as a very luxury item to buy at the time, but actually it's kind of my taxi, I call it, because I just use it 90% of my life. So it's probably fairly useless on a desert island, has to be said. But,
well, I'll allow you the amp as well and electricity just to play those two items, nothing else.
Yeah, in reality, it'll probably be my glasses because I'm just so useless at the moment.
I'm going to ask you before we finish. Can you remember who you called the bastard offspring of Bob Monkhouse? I think that's one of my favourite lines that you said, and I don't know if you remember who you called that. The bastard offspring of Bob Monkhouse.
This thing came up weirdly recently, which has took me by surprise because I don't think I did actually say that actually, and it was Robbie Williams.
Oh, that's disappointing. Yes, it was.
What I did call him was the Baldunican of the 90s, which I thought
brilliant.
And I did say that, and I wasn't meaning to be rude. I just felt like he was that kind of like middle of the road entertainer, and I feel I was right. He was, and he still is. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. I love a bit of Val, but he took great offence at that. It was very aggressive. Yeah, there was a nasty incident where he personally was pretty rude. But then about 5 years later, weirdly, I did see him somewhere again, thinking he was going to thump me, and he came and apologised. He said, "I'm really sorry. It was terrible. I was coked off my nut, and that's an awful thing to do. And we're allowed to do things." So I find it really bizarre that recently he said something, brought this up about me, and it was kind of, I can't believe I'm on Robbie Williams' radar at all.
Yeah. I know. I think it was.
He never forgot.
I think it was an interview. I think that came up a couple of years ago, which sort of made it resurface.
I can't imagine on earth that I would mean anything in his world, but I don't know. I'm flattered if anything. Yeah, but
do you know what that's like, Bernard? And you would have had this as well. Like when you've done a gig and everyone else is telling you you're brilliant, and there's one guy at the front who's just like turned to his mate and gone, just one look, and that's all you remember. That's all you take away from the set. Is that all years of being Robbie Williams, but just every so often he goes to sleep and he thinks, the Butler basically called me a wanker, didn't
he? I'm in his head when he sleeps.
yeah, he's there going, he just wakes up, he's I wasn't real, I'm Val Dunican, I'm a light and little.
You know what you said though about the being in the front? Sorry, go.
Right, he knows you're right. You bodied him completely. His entire career is a sham now from when you said that.
That is hilarious. But I like the Baldunica comment. But when you said about the being on the front row, Tayo,
yeah,
Sorry, I missed that, Bernard. After you,
I'll take this opportunity to publicly apologise to Robbie because he will.
no, don't. Yeah, no, don't. Anyway, what you said about being in the front row, Tayo, reminded me of something else for you, Bernard. Though and this is, I saw this, and you said, I think, Suede. Well, after you'd left Suede, obviously, a few years, early 2000s, I think they played a charity gig, and someone asked you interviewed as well. You said someone asked you about whether you've been invited to go or whether you were going to go, and all I can remember is you said, "Oh yeah, I'll be there. I wish them luck. I hope they raise a lot of money." Words to this effect: "Hope they raise a lot of money for the charity, but I'll be there on the front row, flicking peanuts at them throughout the gig, or something like that." You flicking peanuts. That was funny as well.
Oh, I didn't mean offence. I thought.
No, I know.
Like peanuts at me, as long as they pay their ticket, I'm kind of happy. Really.
Yeah. Anyway, at the moment you're working with Pet Shop Boys, I understand. Is that right? Or
well,
I
I did.
Been?
I did. Yeah, I was on their Race Reach record, which is a huge thrill for me because I was a fan growing up, and so it's kind of one of those amazing moments. Like, wow, this is happening. I'm on a Pet Shop Boys record. So yeah, that was great.
Right, excellent, fantastic. Now, what about you, Ty? What would be your luxury item?
It's next door, actually. I should have brought it in beforehand. Actually, it's a. I got it a couple of years ago when I was in Paris. I went to an event with a friend of mine called Lloyd Griffiths, who's a comedian and so he used to do soccer and stuff like that. So he's doing some football event, and Robert Pires was going to be there. So I said, I have to come along and I'm going to stand there and pretend, and then you have to make it look like this by accident that I get to say that to Robert Pires. So he did this anyway. So I met Robert Pires and I had a World Cup ball, and because I'm a grown man and really shouldn't be swooning over someone as much as I clearly was that day, I the ball and a pen, and I asked him to sign it to my partner's kid because it's not for me. Like, you got to do it for the kid. So can you sew it? So the ball says to Rafi, love Robert Pires 7. At this point, I'll say that the kid Rafi's never touched the ball at all because
Fantastic.
It's next door. So when he's old enough, I'll give it to him. But yeah, my luxury item would be to practice. If I couldn't take one of Bernard's guitars or one of Prince's guitars to practice, then I would take the football with Robert Pires' name on it and practice my keepy uppies because Lord knows I'd have time.
Fantastic, yeah, that's a good idea actually. And but hacky sack could be quite good as well because that will never deflate, would it? I suppose. Anyway, say again. Sorry, you broke up then.
You can't fit Robert Pires on a hacky sack. You can't fit his signature on a hacky sack.
Oh no, you can't. No, that's very true. Very true, actually. Yeah, very true. I was just thinking about the keepy uppies. Right. So that's it then, guys. And I can't thank you all enough for coming on tonight. I really, really enjoyed it. Your answers were absolutely amazing. Really, really good. And it's nice to be in nostalgia, isn't it? Really, going through different people's memories and what's special to them. Francis, I've had obviously a couple of funny moments that I remembered from Bernard's sort of past. You were recently on the Arsecast, weren't you? And I absolutely loved the story. I don't think you don't have to go through it again. I know everyone needs to sort of get off, but when you met Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, and you know how rude he was, and what you said to him basically and did to him in the end, it was hilarious. Made me really laugh out loud.
Yeah, I think I didn't punch him, but I wanted to. I did grab him and throw him out of the studio because he was. And I was sick of dealing with arsehole rock stars. No offense, Ben. I'm working at Triple J.
He's not an arsehole rock star. He's a lovely rock star.
He's a wonderful, beautiful man. But it was just awful. He was just detestable. You know how in that sort of relationship, I was hosting the morning program, which is like what is it? Australia's equivalent of Radio 1. Although I reckon a little bit cooler. It's still really good to listen to. And he came in, and I said to the record company, look, don't bring him in because he's got a reputation of being an arsehole. And I said, and he doesn't like doing interviews. And I said, "Oh, we'll pre-record it so that it won't go to like to where it'll be fine." He only wants to do one interview, he wants to do a Triple J. So he comes in, he sits down, slumps down in the chair. And I go, "Oh, here we go. So I go, it was around the time of Melancholy and Infinite Sadness, and I said, "So Billy, you've had a couple of years off. What have you been doing in that time? To get ready to." He goes, "What do you care?" And I went, "Okay."
Wow.
I take a breath. I can't ask a series of other questions, trying to make this thing work. And I could see the Virgin Records people and in the background looking in, and they were listening, and they could see that I was getting increasingly not happy. And so I thought, I'll restart it again. I said, "Well, Bill, I've got a big record collection, and I reckon you and I might have a few things in common. Are you a big Black Sabbath fan?" He goes, "You don't need to know anything about my record collection. I would never sit there and listen to records with you. What does it matter to you?" And I turned the mics off and I said, "You're right. It doesn't matter to me. Get the fuck out of my studio." He said, "What?" I walked around the nest. I said,
love that.
"Fuck out of my studio now. I told these people not to fucking time, and you're wasting my time." Up and said, I was pretty angry. I probably should have touched him. These days I probably get sued, but I picked him up by the collar and carried him to the studio and just "Get the fuck out," and threw him out of the studio.
Absolutely
and
love it.
I was probably the first person in about 10 years that said no to him.
Yeah,
I just think it's brilliant. I just think
I
it's
still
fantastic.
feel good about it today someone finally told him not to be such an arsehole. But I think he's worse now. I think he's almost like Margaret Trump's sort of territory when I see stuff about him.
I honestly got no idea what he's doing now, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a good long hard think about himself, and looked at himself in the mirror after that.
I felt good about that.
Don't blame you. Don't blame you at all. Well,
I would never do that to you, Tayo. Sit there. I would never do that to you guys. I love people.
I mean, I would never do that to you for a start. And if I was thinking about it now, then I certainly wouldn't do it now anyway. So,
well, thanks again, guys. Really thank you for stopping over. We've overrun, obviously, and I do appreciate you all stopping later. And
thanks for keeping me at the start.
And let's hope for a good result tomorrow. And Tayo,
yes.
Remind me of that long form podcast you made. I want to be able to hear it.
It's called Giant, and it's exclusive on Spotify. It's called Giant. 6 episodes on Ronaldo when he was at PSV. So it's sort of superhero origin story. One about 7 winners of the Women's World Cup, including Michelle Akers and stuff. One about Arsenal United, Wimbledon, Nigeria winning the Olympics in '96.
Beauty.
Some good stories in there, I hope.
You must listen to the Tuesday Club as well. Get it on your playlist if you don't already. I'm sure you maybe do, but absolutely brilliant.
Thanks,
guys.
Thanks ever so much, and I will really hope to speak to you all again in the future. You never know.
Man.
Thanks very much for your time, guys.
Stay safe.
Do appreciate it. Thanks everyone for watching. The audio version of this podcast is available on Spotify or iTunes. If you do listen on Apple, then please give us a 5-star review. It would be great to get some more listens out there. So thanks very much for your time, everyone. I'm looking at doing a live watch along tomorrow. It's a different one, different type. It's literally just a group of mates watching the match with a few beers, and we're not going to be commentating. We're not going to be sort of analysing the match. It's just going to be real-time reaction. And if you want to have more of a realistic, atmosphere whilst you're watching the game tomorrow, rather than the piped-in music that they're going to be doing on Sky, then please, join in, and we can chat over the chat panel as well whilst it's going on, and you can feel like hopefully you're watching it with a group of mates yourself as well. So I'll speak to you tomorrow. Let's wish for the best possible result. I'm confident. I don't think we'll lose, so fingers crossed. Take care of all yourselves, and good night. See you tomorrow.